So we saw in that bit I just showed, we got a few seconds of this intercutting that's happening between like Taylor Swift and
Billy
Billy
Preston.
Preston. But there's several minutes in the beginning of the film where you're cutting through
6 minutes, yes.
through I don't know how many acts. But the dexterity of that edit is just mind-blowing. I mean, I think you can just show that to an editor, and if they stay in the room, then they've got some hope, and the weak ones will just crumble and walk away.
You know, it's SNL, and in my mind, what good is any SNL product or project if it doesn't have a strong cold open? And so, well, you know, initially when I got this project, I was just going to do like the 50 best performances of SNL. It sounds simple, right? But then I chose like, by the time I made my 35th choice, I was still in 1987, 88, and I realized I wasn't going to make it to 2025. Like something was going to have to get sacrificed. So had to sort of knock the Jenga down and start over again. And basically me and John MacDonald, my editor, you know, we're both musicians and kind of DJ centric. So I wanted to build a world in which I could amalgamate in a natural way for Cher, Hanson, Devo, Dolly Parton, and Salt and Pepper to just fit in one effortless review, you know. And so, yeah, this took us 11 months to.
That 6 minutes took you 11 months?
That 6 months just took the 11 months. Like I was finished the doc way before I begged for like a 4-month extension, and it would be like 20 seconds a week, but it had to be perfect. And then once it was done, there were holdouts. Like I still had to get it cleared, and that was the impossible thing. So, relationships are everything. So I pretty much just ambushed what I call the 23 hell no's. And just like, look at this. Don't you want to be a part of history? And then that's kind of how the only holdout was Luciano Pavarotti. Just it was one thing with him and James Brown together, like one note. But you know, I couldn't. You have to show someone what it is in a totality for them to get this is an art project. This isn't like, you know, me just taking your song and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I would guess that a lot of these musicians you've had contact with before, maybe all these musicians you've had contact with before.
Yeah.
But can you talk about your process of interviewing them and how you're a person who's been interviewed a lot yourself for these kinds of films. What do you do to, like, you know, get your best out of Mick Jagger in the 15 minutes you have of him?
Well, I think the advantage of me being at the helm is the kind of inside baseball education that I have. I'm not coming in the name of a journalist, you know, so it's not like gotcha questions or that sort of thing. I think oftentimes celebrities are shy or hesitant to really open up and be vulnerable in front of, you know, like a stranger or whatever. But you know, I will say that for the most part that I already knew maybe 70% of the people I was interviewing. If not, they knew of me and were sort of like, oh, this is fun. So number one, they dropped their guard. And I guess in this very specific case, I never approached this as a project. Like I was genuinely obsessed and kind of wanting to know, like, what was your thought process and da 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 da. So I'll basically say that just being an artist myself, I know the questions to ask that most artists don't get asked, you know. Mainly like, you know, like how did you feel about this and how did you feel about that? What I'll say probably what I'll say is that there is a kind of a narrative thread with the 16 stories that we tell. And that's the thing that I want people to sort of take with them, which is I'm always trying to figure out like what message can I give creatives and how to create, because people often ask like, well, can you give me advice on that sort of thing? And so for these 16 stories, the premise is always the same. It's like someone's presented with a challenge, and the first thing they react to is, no, this cannot happen. Like Eddie Murphy thinks it's dumb to be James Brown in the hot tub. Like, what does that mean? Jimmy Fallon does not want to knock on Mick Jagger's door to sort of present this idea to him about them being in the mirror together. Even with the Elvis Costello situation, with him switching songs mid-performance, like there's a no, a pondering, and then there's a one step forward, and then there's a paradigm shift, and then next thing you know, you made history. None of them know, no one knows that they're making history at that moment. And then they just, and that to me is like the real answer of artistry. Just take one step forward, show up, which doesn't sound like notable or all that important, but literally it's just being present, stepping into it, and kind of let the universe do its magic, you know?
So how did you find that structure? I know I was watching it, and I was like, when is that Elvis Costello moment going to come? Which comes like 90 minutes in the film, even though it was in 1977.
I can't even lie to you. Like the story kind of just found us. Once we decided that, okay, this is going to be a documentary, a narrative, what is it that we want to know? Like, well, number one, I had to fight for 3 hours because initially it was 2 hours, and it's like, what? I can't tell something notable or important in a 2 hour period. So once I got the 3 hours that I wanted, I don't know. I just feel like pretty much just asking. It's more like emotional questions. It's never like, well, tell us what it's, or it's how did it feel to be in a position like this is your first time on the show, and it's always when you get a feel thing, you get a way different answer. So you kind of have to frame your questions into how did you feel. Now, if it's a musical guest, of course they're like, well, I'm nervous or I'm excited because I watched this show since I was 10. But also the thing I discovered was that the iconic moments of SNL that sort of stick with you long after the decades go by, I'll say a majority of them are musical sketches. Be it King Tut for Steve Martin, or the Wayne's World theme, or even the Debbie Downer. Like, there's always a musical element there. So that's when I realized early, like, oh, this is a musical variety show. We say it's a comedy sketch show, but music is kind of the adhesive that sticks to our memory. And once I realized that this was a brilliant musical show, then that was our basis. But again, it's them revealing to us mid-interview, oh, like I didn't know about that. So there's a lot of stuff I found out in this project that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Well, I mean, you're a walking encyclopedia of music history, and I'm sure when you got onto the assignment, you were thinking right away, like, oh, there's this, there's this, there's this, there's this. But as you got into the archives, were there performances you'd never seen before?
Oh man, so I mean, to be honest with you, because Lauren got to me early. I'll say, yeah, February, March of 2021. Like after when Summer of Soul won our awards for Sundance, then I realized like, oh, this isn't just like some niche cool side project I'm doing. Like this might actually make an impact or that sort of thing. So once it's like, okay, Summer of Souls established, and suddenly the phone call started to come, and Lauren was just first. At first I was nervous because if you get summoned to the 17th floor at 30 Rock, your life is going to change either way. You're about to get promoted or you're going to get fired. So no one wants to hear, Lauren wants to see you on 17. I start thinking like everything I did on social media, like, well, I don't think he knows about that. So pretty much, yeah, once he gave me a kind of a 3-year head start with it. And naturally, one of the coolest things about working at what I dubbed 30 Rock University is just their database. Like in everyone's computer alone, there's literally the history of the channel there. So I can watch all of the canceled shows. I can watch pilots that didn't make it. In the case of SNL, there's also the dress rehearsals, which are night and day. Like
Wow.
the cowbell sketch in the dress rehearsal wasn't half as hilarious as the final one. Like, so there's that part too. So naturally, I think this was just a legal way for me to watch all 939 episodes. Because you
Get paid
best
for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was dying to figure out, like, I wonder who I have to sneak money to get a hard drive of all the episodes so I could watch it at home. And now, I'm a master manifester.
Before I talk about Sly Lives, I want to ask about how Summer of Soul did something different to your career, because for years before that, you were reliably, one of the most entertaining talking heads in a music documentary. Lots of people were using you to tell their story
Right.
about someone else. So what did it mean for you to, be not just contributing to other people's stories, but then to start to get to tell these stories yourself?
To be honest with you, oftentimes we talk about elevation or doing something different. Like whatever we're doing in life, I'm certain that there's a moment where you imagine that you're at the top of the pyramid. Like if you're working in somewhere, then hopefully you'll ask to be manager or owner or that. So in my case, I'll be honest with you, like I sort of ducked the responsibility, I thought it was a prank personally. I just like, wait, what's wrong with the footage? Why would they trust me with 50 hours of this valuable footage and not go to an established director that will? And they kept saying, like, we heard your podcast. We feel like you're a natural storyteller and you're a musician as well. So it took about 7 months for them to kind of beat me down. And plus the pandemic had just started. And so it's literally like the universe just cleared the path for me to do this. And even as I was doing it, as with most things, like, my resume is quite strong, but oftentimes it's just under the radar stuff. Like, oh yeah, I was part of the Hamilton team. Like one of those things I forget about. So I'm kind of used to.
Which for the rest of us, we would dine out on that every night of our life.
No, I never humble brag on Hamilton. It was just like, yeah, I did that too. But I'm just used to like being in the room where it happens. And, then it's 3 weeks later and then I'm doing another project and another project. So to be honest with you, in 2020, I was like, well, I'm going to finish this Roots album as soon as I get this little film out the way. And then I'll get back to the Roots album. And suddenly it's the opposite happens, and now it's like, oh, maybe I am a storyteller. So it's everyone has a moment to go from am I to I am in their life, and oftentimes I will say that I duck that responsibility in the beginning, but once at the helm, I just used what I know. I think the thing that I told myself was that, okay, well, I taught at NYU, but I didn't go to NYU film school, or like, what do I know about this? Um, so the way that we crafted Summer of Soul is kind of similar to how I think of making records. Like, and with every project, I do the same thing. I kind of have to put a chart, a vision chart of what I see. And the first thing I always start with is, in the last 10 minutes of whatever project it is, what feeling do you want people to walk away with when they're in the theater? So, um, kind of work backwards. And, editing wise, because I am a product of hip hop, um, the kind of music that I gravitated towards was the music when I was 16. And it just so happens that a group like Public Enemy was the soundtrack of my 15 to 20 period. So their production method is kind of uh like Jackson Pollock's art. Like, they just throw whatever against the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks. If not, and literally that was the process for all the films, Sly, the SNL, and Summer of Soul.
So once you kind of gain this mantle of you can be this storyteller, it doesn't surprise me that the story of Sly and the Family Stone would be one that you would gravitate to.
Yeah.
And but maybe you can say why that was such an important one to you.
All right. So um, I think we started. So the editing process of Summer of Soul happens in the summer of 2020, when we're um, yeah, like, I'll say in the last 3 months of editing, and we're watching and editing Sly and the Family Stone for Summer of Soul, and I tell my editor and producer, I'm like, "Yo," I said, "it's so weird at this very moment. Sly doesn't know that this performance in Harlem is a 10-day dress rehearsal for the event that's going to change his life, which is Woodstock. Once Sly and the Family Stone does Woodstock, then he will be a household name. And there's this immense level pressure that he'll be under, that he sort of buckles at the knees. And history, it's it's still up in the air whether or not that was a self-sabotage, or if he did what he was supposed to do, which is basically, the first 4 years of his career, he wrote 8 life-changing songs and invented the alphabet that we're still writing pop music from. Like, he's such a pioneer, like the first to really take advantage of multi-track recording, the first to use a drum machine, wah-wah pedals. Like, literally, he invented funk with the There Is a Riot Going On album. Um, so that said, I said, man, like, not for nothing, this project's cool, but man, someone needs to do a Sly of the Family Stone doc. That's the thing I want to see. And 4 random hours later, out of nowhere, like, Common calls me and was like, "Yeah, man, I hear you doing that Black Woodstock project." We didn't have the title yet. And he's like, "I don't know if you know this, but we have the life rights to Sly and the Family Stone." So I was like, "Yo, I was just talking about that 4 hours ago at lunch." And he was like, you think you want to do that after this?" I was like, "Hell yeah." So the reason why I wanted to do the slide doc is that the I'm often in the passenger seat of some of our most, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, um, some of our more neurotic um, artists, artists. Oftentimes I'm asked, why does this one always show up 3 hours late? Why is this one always cancel? Why is this one only release records every decade? Why is this one in jail? Why is this one dead? Why is that one dead? Why is this one always mired in like, I'm that person. And, I've explained that self-sabotage is real, and it's hard for people to understand that, like, well, they make it look so easy. They go on stage, they sing their songs, and they go home and to their luxury mansions or whatever. And there's so much psychological anxiety that goes on in an artist's head that it's almost like when you experience the power of celebrity, it's like no drug you ever experienced. And the first time I went to Brazil and just put my hand in the air, and the whole audience put their hand in the air, and I put it down, and I put it left, right, and they were mirroring me. Like, that messed with me, even though it was innocent. Like, I was just about to throw my drumsticks in the audience, and they were like this, and then I did that and that, and I was like, wow, I could make like 40,000 people do whatever I said. And I remember that whole night, I was just thinking, like,
Hard just to go to sleep after that.
yeah, it gets in your head that, like, oh, great, cliche time. No one person should have all that power. And oftentimes we get inside our heads, and sometimes in order to cope with it, there is a self-soothing, self-mechanism, and it's not just drinking and drugs. You might have to shoot it, pop it, smoke it. Some people work it away, some people eat it away, some people rage it away, some people sex it away. Like, there's at least like 25 types of kind of self-soothing, self-medicating,
Few of them functional.
if that, if that. And so even though it's the story of Sly and the Family Stone, I'm using their story to really tell you the story of who? Lauryn Hill or Frank Ocean or
The
Kanye.
Burden of Black Genius.
Yes, literally that level of pressure that one has to live with. And I know, like, for a lot of us, it's a dismissive, tiny violin, cries a river, as you're living in your expensive house, driving your car. But, the evidence is there. Like, if you go to my Instagram, which could also double as, someone's obituary, that's kind of the evidence of it. So I think I wanted to make a project to sort of smoke signal, like, you're seen. Only now we're getting in the place where we're allowing the conversation of, like, mental health and being emotional. That was a thing of shame. Like, oh, that person is emotional. No one wants to be called emotional or a person with attitude or soft or angry or that sort of thing. And no, emotions are real. We have to express them, even as artists.
I heard an interview that you did with Terry Gross on Fresh Air, and you talked about this music of Sly Stone and so many other musicians. You invoked Aretha Franklin. It's beautiful music, but it's also the sound of a life of pain. That
Oh yeah. Well, it's therapy. Like, people, and a lot of this is subjective. My opinion is never the law. I mean, but I sit around and do critical thinking about I like figuring out how do things work and analyze things a little too much sometimes. But, for a good number of my father's generation or my grandmother's generation or my great-grandparents, there wasn't a thing as therapy. And so, but there are ways for you to deal with emotions. Like, as human beings, we should not be able to hoard emotion, because if you keep it close to the chest, that's kind of the beginning of disease. This is how disease starts, when your body can't let go of certain emotional baggage. And so when I hear James Brown screaming, when I was a kid, it was hilarious to me. Like, why is he yelling like that? Like, what the hell? Like, but that's a cathartic release for him. Same with Aretha Franklin. And here's the thing is that, people ask me, like, well, how come today it isn't it isn't like it was, 30, 40 years ago. Like how come I don't feel that emotional connection? Um, around 85, 86, probably we discovered the greatest way to numb, you know, uh, during the beginning of the crack era in the mid 80s, which now that generation, 40, um, a lot of the music is sort of reflected in that. And so I'm not too judgmental when I hear like mumble rap or just like monotone, like the same note everywhere, never an inflection, never emotion, because it's numbing of emotions. Like our version of numbing of emotions was cool. Like the idea of cool is hoarding your emotions. You hide behind sunglasses, and because our arrival in this country um, came with penalties if you express an emotion. You're showing off, or you're soft, or whatever, like suspect. If you laugh too much, what you laughing at? If you cry, you're not a real man, or you're emotional. You're always, always crying, or anger. Then you got an attitude, or you're the angry person. And so oftentimes, because emotions aren't safe, one will just hide it. And the way that we hid it, sort of like soul food, we made it sexy. Like, oh man, that person's cool. But you think of every cool person or figure that we had, from Miles Davis to, even when they talk about it in the SNL doc, like Miles Davis I used to think Miles Davis turning his back was such a cool thing. But then I realized like that's his way of, like you'll quit a relationship before you get fired or dumped. And so I mean, there's so much under the surface with that. And yeah, I think that now we're just starting to get comfortable with um, the idea of being vulnerable, which not, I don't know why that's such an issue with us, but like emotional trust and not getting hurt. We're in the beginning stages of that now, of trying to correct 500 years of resistance.
I wonder when you noticed that was a theme, when you like realized that was important.
Because you got to walk it like you talk it, and for me, that's always been. 5 years ago, I would have never told a journalist like, "Well, I've been in therapy for da 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 da," because it's always done with shame. Like, you don't want no one to think you're crazy, or that sort of thing. That's kind of how we saw therapy, or sort of like a luxurious white thing, therapy. Um, and I think when you inch towards 40, you start to think of your life differently, especially if you're a public figure. And it's like, what do I want to leave people with? Now, for me, thankfully, like I did a lot of this, even though like I was lightly doing therapy and whatnot before the pandemic. It was the pandemic and not working. Like working was always my avoidance thing. Like I'll do 42 trillion projects and have 17 jobs, never present, never, always busy, always distracted. And then once the pandemic came and I had nothing, then it's like I had to do the work, because without the excuse of, oh, I can't do that right now, I gotta edit the song or work on this movie, or without any of that, then it's like, okay, I'll do the work. So it's only 5 years ago where I really started to dig deep into just what is it that I want to be. And it's not like the cliche thing, like, well, I want to be a good example to people, whatever. But it's like you kind of have to live it yourself. So um, a great example is like after the Oscar. After that, like literally probably 9 months after the Oscar, like the crazy amount of panic attacks, self sabotaging, fear, all those things sort of came to a head, and but I was wise enough to know, okay, this is where you start the path that they're on. And if you don't do it, then if you see the evidence of our self-sabotagers today, like that's the road you're headed to. So yeah, as an artist, I'm aware of it every day. And I think for me, especially on my side of the fence with hip hop, like there's so much emotional work that has to be done that I think that we're not getting to. And I'm tired of death being the end of the sentence.
You've given us so many gifts, and I feel like this is a new one, this conversation that you're beginning. Go home and watch that cold open.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, back to SNL.
Of SNL. I know you've got a lot of projects in queue coming up, an Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary.
Yeah, we're finishing Earth, Wind, and Fire right now. Yeah.
So
you're going to love that one. It's about metaphysics, not about Earth, Wind, and Fire, but about metaphysics.
Well, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories tonight.
Thank you.